You know, one of the most important things in life is to kind of figure out how to manage the things that matter. And unfortunately for many of us, we take the things that matter, we put them in weird priorities. We're taught in many ways that money has to be the focus of our lives because it's what ensures we have groceries, it's what ensures we get our bills paid, it's what ensures or gives us an opportunity to have an edge in life. But the truth is that some of us will take that and try to make more of it than what it really is. And so it becomes this over-exhausting thing that we pursue and we look for. But the author of Proverbs says a couple of things about how we manage our wealth and how we put wealth out to others. Proverbs 11:25 says, "A generous person will prosper. Whoever refreshes others will be refreshed." And then again at 11:28 it says, "Those who trust in their riches fall, or will fall, but the righteous will thrive like a green leaf." And I love this because, again, the author of Proverbs, and even in the Bible, we're not told that money is evil. We're not told that it's the root of all evil, but the root of an evil or an evil idea. That the problem that we run into with money is that sometimes it becomes our focus. Instead of the fact that, hey, look, you know, the life I've been given every day is something that I want to appreciate, something that I want to hang on to, and also something I want to give away. It's interesting that sometimes we forget some of our greatest wealth is really just our time. It's our generosity of spirit, it's our kindness, it's the way that we exercise each day with a sense of, I'm glad for this space. Sometimes the best way you can be generous is just to make sure that the person you just talked to feel like, had you not talked to them, your day would be less. God bless you. Go in peace. So one of the things we all struggle with is kind of our own perception of self. And there are things that we do that kind of bring us kind of more alive and maybe give us a picture even of ourselves where we kind of get a little puffy about it. But the truth is that you and I, we are called to be smart about who we are and to acknowledge that God has made each of us with His own particular intent and purposes. And one of the things that wisdom does for us is it kind of keeps us in that place. The author of Proverbs says in chapter 12, "Better to be a nobody and yet have a servant than to pretend to be somebody and have no food." Later on in verse 11 of chapter 12, it says, "Those who work their land will have abundant food, but those who chase fantasies have no sense." And I like this passage because it reminds us that, you know, what God is doing in each of us is important, but sometimes we can allow folly to assume we're more important than what we really are. It's not to devalue us, as God has put His fingerprint on all of us. And yet it is to say every one of us are a puzzle in someone else's life, a puzzle piece in someone else's life, and they into ours. So we need everyone, and we need to recognize that. I love that the author says it's better to be poor and have a servant than ultimately to be wealthy and have no food. And it's all just about perspective. It's about how you treat people. And recognizing wisdom says, take good inventory of yourself and be willing to give the same freedom to other people. God bless you. Go in peace. You know, one of the most difficult things that I have to do in my life is ask for advice. It's strange that would be difficult, but the reality is that sometimes in our minds we don't want to. We don't want to ask people for advice, or more importantly, if advice is given to us that we haven't requested, we don't necessarily want to take it. And I imagine there's some, you know, conversations here and there about when it's appropriate to give advice, when you should receive it, all those kinds of things. But I love that we are built to continue to grow in knowledge. And no matter how far along we get in life, we need people's help and we need insight because we get blind spots. And more than that, we put blinders on. The author of Proverbs in chapter 13 says, "Where there is strife, there is pride. But wisdom is found in those who take advice." Proverbs 13:13 says, "Whoever scorns instruction will pay for it, but whoever respects a command is rewarded." I think this is important for us because there's a challenge in the very frame of who we are to be open to the fact that either we may be wrong or that we just may be ignorant. And ignorant is not a bad thing. It's just an openness to wisdom. The problem is that sometimes we're just foolish and won't listen. And I love the idea that the author of Proverbs says, where there is strife, there is pride. Meaning, where there are problems in your life, in most cases, it's because you're just prideful and you won't listen. You won't pay attention. You've already got in your mind what you think the answer is. But he says, wisdom is found in those who take advice. Those who hear from others and willfully say, okay, I can use that. To acknowledge that sometimes you just have to chew up the meat and spit out the bones. Sometimes advice comes with criticism you don't like, but it's good advice. And so sometimes you have to throw out what it is that you can't use, but latch onto what you can. Where there is strife, there is pride, but wisdom is found in those who take advice. God bless you. Go in peace. You know, it's really popular, and people say it all the time about, telling a little lie or just a little something to cover up something, whatever it may be. And the problem with, of course, little lies is that they become more and more. You have to cover them up with other little lies. And the problem with that is that you never quite get back to a place where you can say, I got you. I need to say I'm sorry. I need to refocus and do what I need to do. And so the author of Proverbs chapter 14 says this, an honest witness does not deceive, but a false witness pours out lies. Verse 15 of chapter 14 says, the simple believe anything, but the prudent give thought to their steps. One of the challenges with that is to acknowledge that oftentimes we lie thinking that we're going to protect ourselves or protect someone else. And the reality is we do more harm in most cases than not. And one of the things we're always having to figure out is, what do my words mean down the road? Like, if I cover this in a lie now, am I going to be able to uncover it later and show that it wasn't what I should have said? And for many of us, it's remembering that our words, they have lasting impact. The last thing the author of Proverbs says in this chapter is, whoever oppresses the poor shows contempt for their maker, but whoever is kind to the needy honors God. And that may not seem like it connects immediately, except for one major thing, and that is, oftentimes when lies are told, it's to oppress something else. It's to keep something else at bay. And the author of the Proverbs says that those who oppress the poor, they contempt the maker of creation. So think about that for a moment. In what ways would we tell lies that maybe we're trying to cover up something and protect something, and maybe we were telling lies because ultimately we were trying to keep someone else out of the opportunity? Give it some thought today. God bless you. Go in peace. So if I'm completely honest, one of the great challenges I have to do with my words. And I always tell my kids, your words are important. Whatever you say has the impact or has the possibility to impact people in such a way that it livens their life or it creates a weight on it. Our words are so important. And even as an adult, it's so easy to move into a state of cynicism, or if somebody says something that I don't like, I kind of scoff at. And there are so many times when we forget that everyone we come in contact with, they are fighting a battle whether we see it or not. So we should be kind with one another. The author of Proverbs in chapter 15 says, a gentle answer turns away wrath, but a harsh word stirs up anger. He also says, the soothing tongue is a tree of life, but a perverse tongue crushes the spirit. And then he says this, chapter 15, verse 17, better a small serving of vegetables with love than a fattened calf with hatred. You know, we live in this part of the world where a fattened calf, for those who are not vegetarians, is pretty easy to come by. We can go get a hamburger anytime we want to. But in the time of this writing, a fattened calf cost a lot of money. And vegetables were like a dime a dozen. And so the idea that he has is this. He says, it's better a small serving of vegetables with love. To be in the community of someone that you know cares about you, treats you kindly, watches their words, watches their actions. Better to be in service with them than to sit at a table with someone who's harsh and hateful, who is consistently working against you in some context. The last thing I would say about this is I want you to remember that sometimes what other people say, in fact, a majority of the time, is about them and not you. And the opposite is true. Oftentimes what you say to somebody else is about you and not them. God bless you. Go in peace.